So our next guest, without any further ado, is Tammie Lister. Tammie is a product creator focusing on WordPress. She has a hybrid background across product, design, psychology, and development. She contributes to WordPress and is passionate about open source, community, and drinking tea. Her talk today is crafting pathways for customer success, strategies for getting the job done. Navigating the needs of tasks and products can be challenging. Let's cut to the chase. Focus on getting the jobs done that your customers truly need. Discover their path to success and develop your roadmaps accordingly. In this talk, Tammie will guide you on how to identify these crucial jobs and create solutions tailored to them. Let's bring her on. Hello,
Hi.
Tammie. I would say good morning. It's my morning, but good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Still afternoon, so we're all good.
Very good. Well, welcome to Stellar Spark. I'm super excited to hear your talk.
Thank you.
We saw each other recently in Italy, and I'm sure our paths will cross again soon. But it's always a pleasure to see you, and I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to give this talk.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to remove myself, add your screen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, as mentioned, I spend most of my time either making products or supporting those that make them. And in that time, one of the big problems that I see is one of direction. Customers get lost, products lose their way, and in that journey to find success, everyone ends up not knowing what they're trying to get done. Everyone has lost direction. So in this talk, what I'm going to do is look at one particular mindset of jobs to be done and how you can start to get those jobs done that your customers and you actually truly need. How you can discover those paths to success, and more importantly, how you can create roadmaps that actually get you there. So, as I mentioned, there's a problem of direction within products. Even those that have roadmaps and ultimately actually don't have one, even though we like to think that everyone has a roadmap, or ones that have been created a long time ago that maybe are not for the products that are being created today. And that's something we can kind of consider as we talk about this, whether your roadmap is valid or not anymore. This statement I'm about to say might sound untrue, but most products are made to not serve those who are using them in the day that they are being used. They either are created to solve a perceived problem or created to serve some other criteria. Often those working in different areas describing the goal of the product have created this kind of Schrodinger's product in doing so. So there's this culture, many cultures have this similar parable of a group of people through touch describing an elephant when not having seen it before. Each describes the part as something different. Often the products we make have a similar problem to this poor elephant being described. The whole is not seen. So we seek solutions in product work to understand the nature of those products themselves. What are we trying to do with them? What are we trying to create with them? We want to make creating easier as well. There are so many frameworks. It's like we're always looking for the solution. We're always looking for that golden solution that's going to just make everything be magic. And today I want to share one, but I also want to show that maybe you have to take the essence of that and not take it literally. And you have to adapt that to the work that you're doing. So bear that in mind when what I'm sharing is don't necessarily throw out all your practices. Think of how this can adapt to the practices you're using today. It is really, really important to say no solution will ever be a total fit. And that's because they're designed more often in ideal situations for the ones that were designed for that solution. And nothing should ever be absolute. So Jobs to be Done has several roots, but it can be seen by popularized by this person, Clayton. And it's an outcome-driven innovation process. And that trips off the tongue, but really it means it does what most products do. Customers don't buy products, they hire them to get the jobs done. So many in product creation have seen this following graphic. You don't want to buy this skateboard, the broken down pieces. You actually really, really want the skateboard that does this. And in the article that I've linked here for user interviews, there are two particular descriptions of HubSpot and Spotify that I want to share today, which I think really kind of describe this framework of thinking. Users don't hire HubSpot to create CRM software and marketing automation. They hire HubSpot to grow their business. Users don't hire Spotify to browse, download, and stream media. They hire Spotify to easily and affordably listen to music they love during the most mundane and also the most important parts of their life. And that's kind of key. It's what they're hiring it to do, or what they really, really want these products to do. Jobs aren't just about function. There are powerful social and emotional dimensions to these as well. I'm going to look at some key concepts of this framework. The first is the job. This is the goal and a customer needs to complete, something they need to do. And this is pretty easy to measure. And then the job statements. We're going to look at how these are formed a little bit as well. A clear description of what needs to happen and the criteria for success. Again, that's why all of this is pretty popular, because it's quite easy to measure against. And then the circumstances, understanding the context or circumstances a job occurs in. And then job types, understanding if it's functional, emotional, or social. So let's have a little bit of a look at functional, emotional, and social jobs. So functional jobs are practical, task-orientated. For example, as this, I need a ride to an airport. It's pretty functional, right? And you can have emotional. This is the feelings or the experiences the customer wants to achieve. So they want to feel safe and relaxed on the way to the airport. That's what the drive is. And then social. This is really how they want to be perceived as others and how their interactions are. For example, they may want to be seen as environmentally friendly in their options. And all these drives you need to know to really get the kind of essence of the job that's been trying to be done. So benefit of this customer-centric innovation is you shift the focus from product kind of features to customer needs, and you generally start solving these problems. And you will, by the nature of this approach, actually understand your market better. The way you create will also benefit along with the messaging and your marketing. For example, how you pitch your pricing page is really going to improve. Your emails will improve as well. And you can directly target those that you know, because you know what they're trying to achieve. You can even understand their frictions better and respond better in support. You also have this ability to measure and create memorable experiences. This is powerful, and you connect with users all across their journeys that they're going to be experiencing with you, and you make your products accountable. But let's not think that there aren't issues with this, because it all sounds delightful and amazing, and like it's going to solve all our problems, right? But there are issues. You may, by such a focus on jobs, lose your way and lose that kind of empathy through this honed focus. And you can lack, again, due to that focus, the full perspective or the full view that maybe other frameworks give you. And it can be historically not as practical for complex products. I've shown some pretty narrow kind of processes there, but if you think about some pretty complex flows and pretty complex products, it's going to be different to scale. And generally, in that sense, you need to think of this as part of the process. And there can also be confusion as to even what this means. You often see J2TBD, which is jobs to be done framework, and lots of different terminology, and everyone has different interpretations. And really, you need to have a consensus with everyone who's creating on what you are doing and what it means for you as well. So, but how do you take all of this theory? This is a theory, this is a framework. How do you take it into practice? Let's start looking at some possible methods that you could do for this. So you could start with the following flow. Identify the jobs. This could be you conduct research or synthesize what you actually have. And this is going to be really important as I start to talk through this conversation today. And really, I'm not ever suggesting that you should get rid of everything that you have already. Seeing what you have already as essential resources is really, really important. So consider what you might have as interviews, surveys, or observations, but also consider what you might not have and what you do need to have new. Then you define the job statements. You create clear job statements to describe what you're actually trying to achieve. These can include context and success criteria. We'll look a little bit at those in a minute. And then you create and test on those job statements. This is one of the reasons why something like this is so successful, because you're actually going to be testing, and you're actually going to not just be asking people necessarily, you're also going to be testing against these. And then you iterate, you review and consider what done and could change. So let's start with research. What research does is really identify those jobs. And I like to think of this as a magpie. Magpies go and gather all the shiny things. And that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be gathering all those shiny resources. It might be existing data. Quite often it is, because that's actually a more sustainable approach to research. There's bound to be some incredible research that you already have that will be telling you what the jobs to be done already are or not, or in your company. So use those resources. You don't have to do extensive research again if you already have that within your building. And during this, you often find looking really to find the data on these specific points. Are there specific jobs to be done? Are there clear jobs that people are asking for and paths to those? Where do people not want to hire your product? And that's kind of quite key. What do people kind of trying to make your product do, or saying that your product should do, or all these kind of things? Where are the friction points? Where they're like, well, I don't want it to do this. This is extra. And you're like, no, this feature is really, really important. Well, actually, it might not be at all important. And this is where you learn much about what you don't do. And having clear statements about what you don't do is really, really important as well. And where are people working around you or your products? Where are people really trying to find jobs to be done around what you're trying to do as well? Often workarounds also show new business opportunities, which is pretty awesome. So let's look at some statements, because once we have all that data and identified, we then want to look at how we start creating these statements. So I mentioned crafting these statements, and some of these might be literal. You might craft these in groups and workshops, and you might just craft these on a bit of note paper and have these for yourself. It depends who you're working with and how you're working. And that's the point of all of this. Adapt and see it as just a way that you could start to think about changing your processes a little bit. Maybe take a couple of these things that I'm suggesting today. You don't have to take everything. So what a good statement has is it includes context and a desired outcome. And what it really does is focuses on the customer's perspective. It outlines what they're trying to achieve, why it matters, and under what circumstance they're trying to accomplish. So when I commute to work every day, I need a way to listen to my favorite podcasts without interruption, so that I can stay informed and entertained throughout my journey. But knowing what is not a good statement is just as important. So what it shouldn't do is focus on product features, solutions, or company-centric goals. So this one, for example, our new headphones have noise cancelling technology, a long-lasting battery, and a sleek design, making them the best choice in the market. It's not such a good statement there. So you might have used user stories before. They always have this format, as I want to allow. And that's pretty similar to how we're forming these statements. So when you form a statement, it would be when I want to, so I can. Let's kind of build that up. So when focuses on the situation, and the want focuses on the motivation, and the can focuses on the outcome. So when an important new customer signs up, I want them to be notified so I can start a conversation with them. It's quite a simple one. A more complex one is when an item does not have an estimate or has an estimate I'm not happy with, I want to be able to restart the estimation process and notify everyone so that the team knows a particular item needs to be estimated upon. So you can see these kind of build up these statements. So with this focus on jobs, often people think they can ditch everything. Personally, I don't recommend this. I think it's really should be a companion process. You should look at how it fits in with you. Again, there's no right or wrong to this, but I don't suggest changing all your processes and completely adapting everything. I suggest really look how your team's working. If nothing is working for your product making, then really you do have to completely change your product making process. But thinking about how you can take essence of this into it and just improve your product process is also really important. First, whatever you have as research is also valid. Don't throw anything out because it could be fuel. One of the things that often people throw out during this is personas. Whilst my own preference is, unless you have really strong research and you haven't got really abstracted stereotypes, I wouldn't actually recommend that you use personas. Really think about if your company and your product is thriving and using personas quite effectively, then keep using them. That's okay. They can be part of your process, and you can marry them and have them in companion with this process. Bringing in journeys within and adding them to jobs to be done actually ensures clarity. And user stories help give jobs to be done statements heart, and empathy maps, well, they bring empathy into them. User stories help with marketing massively, and a job to be done statement generally won't actually work with marketing. So that's how you can kind of help with some of the issues of jobs to be done as well. How does this work in action? Well, we've already talked about the research. You might conduct interviews, have surveys, or even observation. Then we identify the jobs, define the job statements, categorize them. This is really, really important when we're doing the functional, the emotional, the social, looking at how that source and motivation and defining those jobs. And then we're doing that prioritization. And this helps determine the order of action. And we're going to get a little bit into roadmaps in a minute. And that's how you start sorting these into your roadmaps. So in prioritization and mapping, what we want to do is we want to take all these jobs. So we've got the statements, we've kind of got all this amazing information. And we want to look at what are the triggers, what are the steps, what are the desired outcomes, what are the stresses. This is the mapping that we're doing. And for those of you that make products, you will notice that this is kind of how you make a product. And that's why this framework really, really works. It's the research, the filter, the plan, create, and next, yep, we have the test and we have the validate. What we want to really be doing is we either want to make rapid product changes, or we want to use product prototypes to really find out whether we have the right jobs and whether we have the right ideas about what we're doing. Then you iterate and then you refine. And this is entirely why this framework fits so well into product making, because, well, it includes testing and the entire flow. So let's look at an example of household chores. How would you take this into action? Well, first, you could conduct interviews, identify jobs from those interviews. For example, I need to clean my house quickly and thoroughly before guests arrive. Then you could categorize and sort into functional, emotional, and social. Functional, I need to clean the house. Emotional, I want to feel proud and confident about the cleanliness. Social, maybe you just actually want to impress someone, impress the guests with a tidy home. You want to feel good about things. And next, you prioritize determining, for example, maybe you have frequent guests, or maybe if you have pets, that changes the frequency of your chores. Then you would create maybe job maps, break down the jobs, dusting, vacuuming, mopping, organizing those different types of things that you want to do as well, those macro jobs as well, into those chores. They need to identify pain points, such as maybe you might have difficulty in some high places, or maybe some furniture was hard to move, or maybe you have accessibility needs and you might need to get help with some of those chores. Next, you test and validate that new cleaning tool that you are just going to solve everyone's problems with against those pain points with actual customers, and iterate and refine. And really, this is how you would use it if you were kind of taking this example. So a foundational part of all of this and translating it is taking it into roadmaps. The how do you in this talk is taking it into action, taking those jobs, prioritizing and placing on that roadmap. They are critical because they help, and they really take these things. You've got all these things and you have everything. And what this does is give you vision and direction, alignment, coordination, easier communication. Everyone is talking about the same thing. They're not talking about it's not Schrodinger's project. Accountability and resource management. And really, in simple terms, everyone is managing, talking, and creating the same elephant effectively. I think it's really important to talk about different levels of roadmaps. Often when you think about it, people think about project roadmaps as one thing. I actually would always advise you have two, at least, product roadmaps. And one is the 10,000-foot vision roadmap. That's going to be your near and future goals. It helps you set. Often you might use that for investment. It can live in your GitHub, but often it lives in your pitch deck. Often it's kind of your visions of what you're going to be doing, probably for your quarter and probably for your year. But then you have your practical on the ground roadmap, which is what you're doing, how you're actually producing things, how you're actually getting things done, and deliverables. There are other practical uses of this approach. I've called out roadmaps, and that's amazing. But turning all these things into practicals is really, really important, and knowing how these benefit. You are able to, from this, as I mentioned earlier, identify product opportunities. You can really do that feature prioritization. You also have the opportunity for better segmentation and to improve onboarding and offboarding. You can benefit customer support and sales training because everyone's going to understand better who they are creating for. So how do we implement all of this? We've looked at a lot of theory so far, but I want to kind of get down, as I'm closing this out, into some steps specifically. So step 1, look at what you have. Look at what research do you have in your product? What can you use today? What is there from interviews to personas and beyond what you have? Gather it all together, prepare, and then start to surface up themes that you have. What you're looking for is evidence that proves itself in multiple places. Where can you pattern match? Ways to qualify instincts around needs, pains, and goals, and anything that adds context. From this, you probably got some actions. You might want a brainstorming workshop. This could be async. I really, really appreciate when people do async brainstorming workshops because it includes everybody. Maps, you might do some maps for customer journeys. I always really advise that you have some deliverables in these steps because then people feel like they're moving and having some progress as well. And then you want some themes and observations. I would say that you would pull these out, have a board apart and start collecting them as you're going, because then people can all start contributing and have some aha moments that they put collectively for everyone to notice. I also recommend that you have a triage space. So as you're going through this, bugs are going to surface, things which are gotchas that are really maybe something that could be quick fixes. And we're going to get into that prioritization in a bit. And then a list of things that people don't want. Have a list, quite literally, of things that people don't want either in your product now or in your product in the future. And really look at that and have that in mind whenever you're considering a feature as well. And competitive analysis. All too often we get caught up in what we're creating to not think about what others are creating. So don't get caught into that. So step 2, define those jobs. Find the jobs that are being done and those that are also not being done. This involves defining those job statements. And I realize I've shared these literal statements, but again, it doesn't have to be literal. It could be literal for some of you. It might not be literal for everyone. It then again depends on everyone getting involved and what you really want to do. It's your baseline. I've worked with some people where it's literal and some people where it's not literal. If you feel comfortable enough to start using those, really start using the functional, emotional, and social aspects of each job, start seeing the different dimensions. If not, get as close as what works for you. The key is that you are starting to see statements and not just personas that have no basis in data. They should be testable, grounded in reality. This is not about forced practices. It's not about focusing on needs. And it's also not about changing the practices of your product making so that you have issues. And some actions that might come from this is you're going to be defining those jobs and also defining a list of what you're not creating or what you're not being hired for. And then 3, the fun bit, where you're prioritizing these jobs. Really, you want to use this, maybe you want a prioritization, easy to say, matrix for the importance and frequency of jobs. And you're starting to see what should or shouldn't get done. A low-fi method of this is to give them ratings. And often a result of this is you really start seeing that flow and start seeing those smaller jobs stack up. So some actions of this, you might have a workshop, have that matrix, you can use these different methods, whatever methods works for you. I recommend having both a sync and async one to really include everyone, but this is something that you can kind of go through. And from there, you create your roadmap, but you probably want to create this in a few pieces or phases. You want to have your quick wins, your feature improvements, and your innovation. And one thing above is to really consider this as maybe a repeated cycle. If you create products, you'll notice this is pretty much a product cycle, but by doing this, you are really focusing on that product cycle as well. And don't really get into that trap of thinking it's all about making a product though. These are, you've got to kind of research at these as well. So phase 1, your quick wins. This is probably fueled by you're going to have found some real gotchas, some of those friction points and some owies, and you want to get those fixed. So think about this. They could be bugs, and they could be very short-term enhancements. This also makes sure everyone feels good at the start by just getting in and doing some fixing. So I would always recommend doing that as well. And then phase 2, feature improvement. So these are more than likely going to be existing features, but they could be something that's existing that just needs a kind of additional functionality, or something maybe you need some extensibility, or something that's someone is requesting. And maybe it's actually an opportunity from a business opportunity from the extensibility. You don't know, something you may have discovered along the way. It's going to be a fine line between what's a quick enhancement and what's going to be a feature improvement, but that's something to do in your matrix. And then innovation. Innovation is where you truly get generally to create without prior art, although it can be innovating from a point to create a feature, of course. It might be how you get to create a new product, perhaps, because something comes up in your work, and that's kind of interesting as well. So let's walk through how we stop zombie roadmaps, because one of those things that always comes up, and I know I'm really for roadmaps, but is that roadmaps get ignored. And I want to kind of tackle this head on in this conversation. So one of the problems is people don't follow them or know where to find them. Often roadmaps are hidden. So a key to prevention of issues is really look at the tools people are using and put roadmaps where people are using those tools. It might be GitHub, it might be whatever you're using, but have your roadmaps where people are using, and have check-ins of those roadmaps as well with regular syncs. Make sure that those roadmaps are reported on as well. Outdated roadmaps are dead roadmaps. Ensure you have those check-ins. I'm going to be repeating this because that is incredibly important. Don't rely on sync, though. Again, there's this theme. When you rely on sync, or when you rely on Slack for your communication methods, it doesn't go well for roadmaps and kind of product management. For example, how do you find this middle ground? Well, one of those ways could be video updates, having those check-ins as well. But something also to be thinking about this is they can become unwieldy. Use that art of triage that you're going to know in your product, and make sure your roadmap is also included. Have those check-ins. Think about, is your roadmap even achievable? Do you need to break it down? That vision may be amazing, might be incredible, but can you actually achieve it? Is it actually something that you can do in a year, that you can do in a quarter? Think about all of those kind of things. Use phases and really embrace triage as well. You might very well have a shepherd of the roadmap, but don't have a single point of failure who controls it. People ignore something when they think just one person is in control of it. That's called humans. And we have to be really, really careful of that. And you really want to create something that everyone feels ownership of. I mentioned earlier, have it where people check in, and really have that ownership of it as well. And simply put, often these jobs to be done framework, these roadmaps, this approach, even part of this approach that I'm sharing today, it really will fail when you don't have stakeholders. And I often call them stickholders, because they can become stickholders when they don't agree. They can poke you with a stick. And I say that with love and care, because they just haven't got agreement and communication, because they don't know what they're agreeing and communicating to. That's really, really important. Make sure everybody is creating from the same point and everyone knows what they are doing. Ensure that everyone is on the same page of the roadmap and heading in the same direction. So above all, don't see this roadmap as untouchable. See it as needing to be fueled and grounded in reality. Once you've done a cycle, make sure you create more, iterate, go through. Make sure they have an end and that they are accountable. Everyone likes that dopamine hit of a roadmap being successful, of ticking something off. That's why we have project management boards, and they're amazing and they really make us feel better. Tasks are great to complete. A dead roadmap is unaccountable and forgotten, with no metric for success. And that kind of brings us to step 5, measure. If you can add anything to roadmap or task that can be defined enough, make sure that you measure it and add that measuring. For example, you can even do it for this, like a quick access to support can be changed to enhance customer support features to provide quick resolutions to common issues. You can do in your statements, make sure they are measurable, make sure that you have something that you can test. Then when you put it up, that can happen for people as well. So I've covered a lot today, and I don't expect you to implement it all at all. That's not what I'm kind of sharing. I hope that you can take a piece of it or a little bit along the way. And I hope that I've shared how starting to consider this approach and considering how to keep things alive a little bit more, you can focus on creating together. This way of creating moves you away from the abstract, focuses more on measuring and deliverables. And it truly can be challenging creating today. But by bringing that focus on truly what your customers are trying to do and bringing back focusing on what you're creating, where you are creating it, you can discover those paths and clear the obstacles in their way and in your way as well. You can focus on your roadmaps and create with the intention, knowing you are focusing on those crucial jobs to create solutions tailored to them. And you can do it in a calm way that you just know that you're creating with ease as well and communicating, and you're all creating in the same direction. And along the way, you can catch the bugs and take full opportunity of that innovation sparked through feedback and ideation. It brings that pace and a cadence and that, again, that calmer way of creating. And I truly believe like you can have the flurry of innovation and that kind of excitement of creating a new product, but you shouldn't feel the burden of product creation. Product creation can be really nice. Processes should help you to do that, not should burden you in feeling to do that. You shouldn't feel, oh, I've got to check this, or oh, I've got to maintain this. They should support you in doing that. And they shouldn't be a distraction. They should ease that communication. So thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to give this talk.